The following story has been brought to you by StoriesToInspire.org.
And Joey Newcomb, when he was here visiting Memphis, he said over a thought from his Rabbi based on a story. And the story is as follows. The story is about Mordechai Tursky, Motel Ahorna Stipler, my great-great-great-grandfather. Motel Ahorna Stipler had a chassid. This chassid was a grain merchant. And he had a competitor who was a non-Jew, and it was a raging anti-Semite. One day the two of them are sitting in the same inn, and this anti-Semitic competitor has his attendant with him. And he goes and he slips poison into the drink of his own attendant. And a minute later, his attendant screaming, collapses on the floor, pronounced dead. And this non-Jew jumps up and says, "Oh, I saw it was the Jewish guy. It was my Jewish competitor. He put the poison in and he was trying to poison me too. He wants to knock off the competition." Immediately, the police were called, and the Jew, understanding the anti-Semitic tone at that time, he realized he was finished. He ran for his life. And he ran to go straight to his Rebbe, Motel Ahorna Stipler. He came in and crying. He told the whole story to his Rebbe, framed, he killed him, and what's gonna be with me? Motel Ahorna Stipler turned to him and said, "I want you to go home." "Go home? How could I go home?" He said, "No, but I want you to go home via a first-class ticket on the steamboat that goes up the river. That's how you're going to go home." The fellow entrusts his Rebbe, and he goes, he buys a first-class ticket, and he gets on the steamboat, but he is worried sick. He's about to go home. He has no solution. He's finished. He gets there into the first-class cabin, and sitting there alone, he begins to weep over a Tehillim. Weep and weep. He does not even notice two distinguished gentlemen that come in. And he's crying and crying, and these fellows see this Jew who's so distraught, weeping so bitterly. They say, "My friend, what's going on? What's the matter?" And he begins to tell them, "I was set up. My competitor hates me, and he poisoned his own attendant, and he's framing me, and I'm going to go back. I have a court case soon, and there's no way. I'm absolutely finished. There's no way. How could I possibly convince anyone the truth of this story? In the face, especially of such anti-Semitism," and he's crying and crying. And these two fellows were really struck by the sincerity of this Jew. And then they continued on to the town. They get to the town. A couple days later, the Jew has his court case. He walks in shaking into the courthouse. And he looks up, and he cannot believe his eyes. There, sitting as the judge, is one of the fellows that he met in the first class on the steamboat. And the other fellow that was with him was the officer in charge of investigating the details of the case. The two of them sit, he walks in, he looks up, and the judge says, "We met this Jew already, we heard this story, and so convinced were we of his sincerity that when we got into town, we went and we sought out his competitor. We invited him for drinks in the bar. And we began to tell him, we're having such difficulty with Jews in our lives. And with the alcohol running through him, he began to tell us, let me tell you, I also had problems with Jews. Let me tell you what I did to get rid of my competitor." And he told us the whole story. He admitted to the crime this Jew in front of us is absolutely innocent of all charges. Said Reb Joey in the name of his Rabbi, the week of Slichas, that's your time in the first class car to talk to the judge before the court case. That's the time when you show up and you open your siddur and your slichas and you say, Hashem, I want to tell you, before Rosh Hashanah, before we have to stand in judgment, let me cry out my woes. I'm stuck. The Yetzer Hara has got me. He's framing me. He's dragging me down. Help me. Forgive me. Pick me up. We want to be better. That's our chance in the car before we ever have to step into the court. And when we step in on Rosh Hashanah, Hashem will say, Satan, move aside. I already spoke with these guys. I know the whole story. They're free of all charges. Satan, you on the other hand, are getting locked up in prison.
Enjoyed this story? Come again. Bring a friend. StoriesToInspire.org